cushion of energy. This force is silent, powerful, and absolute. It follows a law of nature that is as real as gravity. You cannot see the force, but you can always see its effects. Now, I want you to consider a different kind of magnet, one that you carry within you every moment of every day. It is your heart, your mind, your spirit, the core of your being. This inner self also acts as a magnet, governed by its own invisible laws. It is constantly attracting and repelling experiences, emotions, people, and opportunities. The state of this inner magnet determines the texture and quality of your life. It is the silent, unseen architect of your reality. When it is aligned with bitterness, resentment, and anger, it powerfully repels peace, joy, and connection. It attracts more reasons to be bitter, more circumstances to fuel its anger. When it is aligned with grace, compassion, and release, it becomes a powerful attractant for healing, opportunity, and authentic relationships. This is the silent magnet. Its power lies in its silence. Unlike the loud pronouncements of our anger or the visible tears of our sorrow, the state of our forgiveness operates in the background. It is a quiet hum beneath the noise of our daily lives, yet it sets the frequency for everything we experience. It is the reason why two people can endure the exact same tragedy, and 10 years later, one is thriving, filled with light and purpose, while the other remains trapped in the dark, airless room of their past. The external event was the same, but the internal magnet was set to a different polarity. Let me tell you about two men, David and Samuel. They were best friends and business partners who had poured their life savings into a shared dream, a small artisanal coffee shop. For 3 years, they worked tirelessly, and their shop became a beloved local institution. Then a devastating mistake occurred. Samuel, trusted with the company's finances, made a series of risky investments with their capital, believing he could double their profits quickly. The investments failed, and the business collapsed into bankruptcy. In the span of a month, everything they had built was gone. David was consumed by a righteous and searing anger. The betrayal was absolute. He lost his business, his savings, and his best friend. For years, his internal magnet was polarized by this single event. Every conversation circled back to the betrayal. Every new opportunity was viewed through a lens of suspicion. He held onto his anger like a shield, but it was a shield that locked him in, not one that protected him. He became brittle, cynical, and isolated. His health suffered. He complained of chronic headaches and an ever-present tension in his shoulders. The world to him became a place of untrustworthy people and inevitable loss. His magnet was set to betrayal, and it faithfully attracted evidence to support that worldview. Samuel, on the other hand, was crushed by a different weight, the weight of his own guilt. He had not only ruined his own life, but also the life of his dearest friend. For the first year, he was adrift in a sea of self-loathing. He avoided contact with everyone he knew, ashamed and broken. His magnet was set to unworthiness, and it attracted unemployment, isolation, and despair. This is where our story takes a turn. A counselor challenged Samuel with a radical idea, the Forgiveness Project. Not a project to gain David's forgiveness that was outside his control, but a project to forgive himself. It felt impossible, a betrayal of the very real harm he had caused. But slowly, painfully, he began the work. He wrote down the full story of his mistake, not to excuse it, but to understand it. He acknowledged his arrogance, his recklessness, his shame. He had to face the worst parts of himself without flinching. Then he began the process of letting go. He started to see himself not as a monster, but as a flawed human being who had made a catastrophic error. He worked to separate his action from his identity. As Samuel worked on his own forgiveness project, the polarity of his inner magnet began to shift. It was not a sudden change, but a slow, almost imperceptible turn. As he released the self-hatred, a sliver of space opened up for something new. He started volunteering at a soup kitchen, not for praise, but to simply be of service. In that simple act, he found a flicker of purpose. He started taking small, tentative steps toward rebuilding his life. He took a menial job and did it with integrity. Slowly, his magnet, now recalibrating toward redemption and service, began to attract different experiences. He found a small community of friends. He discovered a sense of peace he had never known, even when he was a successful business owner. David, meanwhile, remained locked in his prison of resentment. The Silent Magnet. The Forgiveness Project, The Power of Forgiveness. Chapter 1. The Unseen Force. Have you ever held two magnets in your hands? If you have, you understand the strange and potent magic of an unseen force. There are no visible strings, no audible commands, yet one magnet will leap across the space to connect with another, or it will stubbornly push away, held at a distance by an invisible cushion of energy. This force is silent, powerful, and absolute. It follows a law of nature that is as real as gravity. You cannot see the force, but you can always see its effects. Now I want you to consider a different kind of magnet, one that you carry within you every moment of every day. It is your heart, your mind, your spirit, the core of your being. This inner self also acts as a magnet, governed by its own invisible laws. It is constantly attracting and repelling experiences, emotions, people, and opportunities. The state of this inner magnet determines the texture and quality of your life. It is the silent, unseen architect of your reality. When it is aligned with bitterness, resentment, and anger, it powerfully repels peace, joy, and connection. It attracts more reasons to be bitter, more circumstances to fuel its anger. When it is aligned with grace, compassion, and release, it becomes a powerful attractant for healing, opportunity, and authentic relationships. This is the silent magnet. Its power lies in its silence. Unlike the loud pronouncements of our anger or the visible tears of our sorrow, the state of our forgiveness operates in the background. It is a quiet hum beneath the noise of our daily lives, yet it sets the frequency for everything we experience. It is the reason why two people can endure the exact same tragedy, and 10 years later, one is thriving, filled with light and purpose, while the other remains trapped in the dark, airless room of their past. The external event was the same, but the internal magnet was set to a different polarity. Let me tell you about two men, David and Samuel. They were best friends and business partners who had poured their life savings into a shared dream, a small artisanal coffee shop. For 3 years, they worked tirelessly, and their shop became a beloved local institution. Then a devastating mistake occurred. Samuel, trusted with the company's finances, made a series of risky investments with their capital, believing he could double their profits quickly. The investments failed, and the business collapsed into bankruptcy. In the span of a month, everything they had built was gone. David was consumed by a righteous and searing anger. The betrayal was absolute. He lost his business, his savings, and his best friend. For years, his internal magnet was polarized by this single event. Every conversation circled back to the betrayal. Every new opportunity was viewed through a lens of suspicion. He held onto his anger like a shield, but it was a shield that locked him in, not one that protected him. He became brittle, cynical, and isolated. His health suffered. He complained of chronic headaches and an ever-present tension in his shoulders. The world to him became a place of untrustworthy people and inevitable loss. His magnet was set to betrayal, and it faithfully attracted evidence to support that worldview. Samuel, on the other hand, was crushed by a different weight, the weight of his own guilt. He had not only ruined his own life, but also the life of his dearest friend. For the first year, he was adrift in a sea of self-loathing. He avoided contact with everyone he knew, ashamed and broken. His magnet was set to unworthiness, and it attracted unemployment, isolation, and despair. This is where our story takes a turn. A counselor challenged Samuel with a radical idea, the Forgiveness Project. Not a project to gain David's forgiveness that was outside his control, but a project to forgive himself. It felt impossible, a betrayal of the very real harm he had caused. But slowly, painfully, he began the work. He wrote down the full story of his mistake, not to excuse it, but to understand it. He acknowledged his arrogance, his recklessness, his shame. He had to face the worst parts of himself without flinching. Then he began the process of letting go. He started to see himself not as a monster, but as a flawed human being who had made a catastrophic error. He worked to separate his action from his identity. As Samuel worked on his own forgiveness project, the polarity of his inner magnet began to shift. It was not a sudden change, but a slow, almost imperceptible turn. As he released the self-hatred, a sliver of space opened up for something new. He started volunteering at a soup kitchen, not for praise, but to simply be of service. In that simple act, he found a flicker of purpose. He started taking small, tentative steps toward rebuilding his life. He took a menial job and did it with integrity. Slowly, his magnet, now recalibrating toward redemption and service, began to attract different experiences. He found a small community of friends. He discovered a sense of peace he had never known, even when he was a successful business owner. David, meanwhile, remained locked in his prison of resentment. His friends grew tired of his endless litany of anger. His world shrank. The silent magnet of his unforgiving heart continued to repel joy and attract only bitterness. He saw Samuel from a distance one day, laughing with someone on the street, and it was like a knife in his gut. How dare he be happy? David didn't see the years of painful inner work. He only saw the result. He didn't understand that Samuel's peace wasn't a denial of what happened, but a testament to the power of forgiveness. This book is your invitation to begin your own forgiveness project. It is not a request to condone the wrongs you have suffered. It is not a demand that you forget the pain or reconcile with those who have hurt you. It is something far more profound and far more self-loving. It is a project to recalibrate your own silent magnet. It is about understanding that holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The only person you are harming with the heavy chains of unforgiveness is yourself. The power of forgiveness is not soft or weak. It is the strongest, most courageous force available to a human being. It is the ability to look at a deep wound and choose to clean it, stitch it closed, and allow it to heal into a scar, rather than letting it fester and poison your entire system. The scar remains as a reminder of the experience, but it no longer hurts. It no longer dictates your every move. Throughout these pages, we will explore this unseen force. We will dismantle the heavy machinery of grudges and grievances. We will learn the practical tools needed to embark on this project, from forgiving others to the even more challenging task of forgiving ourselves. We will see that forgiveness is not a single act, but a way of being, a conscious choice to live in a state of grace rather than a state of grievance. What is your magnet attracting right now? Is your life filled with echoes of old pains, or is it open to the music of new possibilities? The choice is not dependent on what others have done to you. It is dependent on what you choose to do with the power you hold within. The Forgiveness Project is the journey of taking back that power, of consciously and deliberately turning your silent magnet toward peace, freedom, and the boundless potential of a healed heart. To begin this project, however, we must first be brutally honest about the cost of not forgiving. We must look unflinchingly at the price we pay for clinging to our pain. Let us now turn to the heavy, invisible burdens we carry, the chains of yesterday. Chapter 2, The Chains of Yesterday. Imagine you are preparing for a long journey. You pack a bag with everything you think you'll need: clothes, food, water, a map. But just as you are about to step out the door, someone hands you a heavy, rough-hewn stone. On it is etched the memory of a deep hurt, a betrayal, a profound disappointment. You must carry this, they say. Not wanting to make a scene, you slip it into your bag. A few steps later, another person gives you another stone, this one representing a mistake you made, a moment of shame you can't seem to shake. Into the bag it goes. This continues until your bag is no longer filled with useful provisions, but with a collection of heavy, jagged stones. With every step you feel their weight. Your shoulders ache, your back screams in protest, and your pace slows to a crawl. The journey, which was once filled with the promise of discovery, becomes a grueling ordeal of endurance. You spend so much energy just managing the weight that you have none left to appreciate the beautiful scenery, to engage with fellow travelers, or to navigate the path ahead with clarity. You are no longer a traveler, you are a porter for your own pain. This is the most accurate metaphor for a life lived without forgiveness. The hurts, betrayals, and grievances we collect are not ephemeral memories. They are tangible, psychic weights. We believe we are holding on to them, but the truth is, they are holding on to us. They are the chains of yesterday, and their grip is relentless, affecting our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being in devastating ways. Let's first examine the emotional cost, which is the most immediate and recognizable. Unforgiveness is an active state, not a passive one. It requires a constant supply of emotional energy to maintain. Think about it. To keep a grudge alive, you have to continually replay the offense in your mind. You have to stoke the fires of anger and resentment, feeding them with memories and what-ifs. This process creates a toxic inner environment, a perpetual state of stress and agitation. Peace of mind becomes an impossibility because your mind is never at peace. It is a courtroom where the same trial is held over and over, and the verdict is always guilty. This emotional turmoil manifests as a constant, low-grade anger, irritability, and cynicism. The world starts to look like a hostile place. You might find yourself snapping at a loved one over something trivial, not realizing that your reaction is fueled by a deeper, unresolved anger from years ago. The joy is drained from present moments because you are viewing them through a filter of past pain. A beautiful sunset might be interrupted by a sudden, bitter memory. A celebration for a friend's success might be tainted by a feeling of injustice from your own life. Unforgiveness is a thief that steals the joy from the present to pay a debt to the past. This emotional burden inevitably spills over into our physical bodies. The mind-body connection is not a New Age concept. It is a scientific fact. The chronic stress created by holding onto anger and resentment triggers a constant fight-or-flight response in our nervous system. This means our bodies are continually flooded with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. In the short term, these hormones are useful for survival, but when they are present day after day, they wreak havoc on our health. Countless studies have linked unforgiveness and chronic anger to a host of physical ailments. These include elevated blood pressure, which increases the risk of heart disease and stroke. It includes a weakened immune system, making us more susceptible to infections and illnesses. It contributes to chronic pain, particularly in the neck, shoulders, and back. the very places we physically manifest the carrying of burdens. It leads to digestive issues, headaches, and sleep disturbances. In essence, the poison of resentment we hold for another person circulates through our own bloodstream. The chains of yesterday are not just a metaphor, they are physically shackling our health and vitality. Consider Maria, a woman in her late 40s who had been estranged from her sister for over a decade. The original argument was about their mother's inheritance, but over the years it had morphed into a monstrous symbol of every perceived slight and misunderstanding from their childhood. Maria was adamant that she would never forgive her sister. "She doesn't deserve it," Maria would say, her jaw tight with conviction. Meanwhile, Maria's health was deteriorating. She was diagnosed with high blood pressure, suffered from debilitating migraines, and was constantly tired. Her doctor suggested stress management techniques, but Maria dismissed them. Her stress, she believed, was justified. It was her sister's fault. What she failed to see was that while her sister was living her life hundreds of miles away, Maria was the one marinating in the corrosive juices of her own anger every single day. The chains she thought she had wrapped around her sister's memory were, in fact, wrapped squarely around her own heart, squeezing the life out of it. Beyond the emotional and physical toll, the chains of yesterday profoundly impact our relationships. When we are bound by unforgiveness toward one person, it taints our interactions with everyone else. We become guarded and suspicious. A new friend's innocent mistake might be interpreted as a sign of impending betrayal. A partner's request for space might trigger deep-seated fears of abandonment. We project the ghosts of our past onto the people in our present. We build walls to protect ourselves from being hurt again, but these walls also prevent love, intimacy, and genuine connection from getting in. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. We expect to be hurt, so we act in ways that push people away, and when they inevitably leave, it reinforces our belief that people cannot be trusted. The original wound becomes a blueprint for all future relationships, ensuring they follow the same tragic pattern. We are trapped in a cycle, unable to see that the key to breaking it lies not in finding the perfect person who will never hurt us, but in healing the original wound that makes us so vulnerable. Finally, and perhaps most tragically, these chains stifle our spiritual growth and our potential. Holding onto a grievance keeps us anchored to the lowest, most reactive parts of our nature. It prevents us from accessing the higher qualities of compassion, grace, and wisdom that reside within all of us. It keeps us small. When your energy is consumed by relitigating the past, you have no energy left to create a new future. Your dreams, your aspirations, your creativity, all are suffocated by the dead weight of your grudges. The person you could become is held hostage by the person you were when you were hurt. You cannot move forward because you are perpetually looking backward. The journey ahead is vast and full of promise, but you cannot take a single step because your ankles are shackled to a moment in time. Recognizing this weight is the first crucial step toward freedom. You must be willing to honestly assess the true cost of your unforgiveness. Ask yourself, how has this anger affected my health? How has it impacted my relationships with my spouse, my children, my friends? How much of my mental energy is spent replaying this hurt? What joy has it stolen from me? What opportunities have I missed because I was too busy being angry? This is not an exercise in blame. It is an exercise in compassionate self-awareness. It is about understanding that you have been carrying an immense burden and that you have a choice. You can continue to drag these stones with you for the rest of your journey, or you can make the courageous decision to set them down. Setting them down is the work of the Forgiveness Project. But before we can learn how to unfasten the chains and lay down the stones, we must be crystal clear about what we are actually doing. The word forgiveness is so often misunderstood, laden with myths and misconceptions that make the very act seem impossible, undesirable, or even unjust. To proceed, we must first dismantle these myths and redefine forgiveness, not as a gift to the person who hurt you, but as the ultimate act of self-liberation. Chapter 3. What Forgiveness is Not. Dispelling the Myths. The path to forgiveness is often blocked by a series of formidable gatekeepers, our own misconceptions. The very word forgiveness can conjure images of weakness, injustice, and vulnerability. We imagine it means we must erase the past, excuse heinous behavior, or welcome a toxic person back into our lives with open arms. These ideas are not only false, but they are also dangerous. They are the myths that keep the chains of yesterday firmly locked in place. If we are to embark on this project of liberation, we must first become mythbusters. We need to understand with absolute clarity what forgiveness is not. Myth number 1, forgiveness is condoning or excusing the offense. This is perhaps the biggest and most damaging myth of all. We think that to forgive means to say, what you did was okay. This feels like a profound betrayal of our own experience. It feels like we are siding with the person who harmed us against ourselves. Why would we ever do that? The simple answer is we wouldn't. Forgiveness does not in any way excuse or condone the harmful behavior. True forgiveness operates on a completely different plane. It starts with the fierce and honest acknowledgement that what happened was not okay. It was wrong. It was hurtful. It caused real damage. Forgiveness does not wipe the slate clean or rewrite history. Instead, it says, I acknowledge the full reality of what you did and the pain it caused me. It was not acceptable. And I am choosing to release myself from the toxic bondage of my anger about it. Think of a judge in a courtroom. The judge can acknowledge the severity of a crime and sentence the perpetrator accordingly. This is the act of holding someone accountable. Forgiveness is a separate, internal act. It is you, after the trial is over, choosing not to let the crime define the rest of your life. You are not saying the crime didn't happen. You are saying you will not serve a life sentence of bitterness for a crime someone else committed. Condoning is about the other person's actions. Forgiveness is about your own inner peace. Myth number 2, forgiveness means you must forget what happened. The phrase forgive and forget has done more harm to the concept of forgiveness than perhaps any other. Forgetting a deep wound is not only impossible for most people, but it's also unwise. Our memories, even painful ones, serve a purpose. They teach us, they inform our choices. They help us recognize warning signs in the future. To intentionally try to induce amnesia about a significant life event is to discard a valuable, albeit painful, lesson. Forgiveness is not about forgetting, it is about changing the way you remember. Imagine a memory as a story you tell yourself. When you are in a state of unforgiveness, the story is raw, visceral, and painful every time you tell it. The emotional charge is as high as it was on the day it happened. The story controls you. When you forgive, you don't erase the story. You become its editor. You can look back on the event, acknowledge it happened, but it no longer has the power to hijack your emotional state. The memory becomes integrated into the larger narrative of your life as something you survived, something you learned from, something that ultimately made you stronger or more compassionate. The memory is still there, but it is no longer a gaping open wound. It is a scar. You can touch it, you can see it, but it no longer causes you to bleed. Forgetting is a function of the mind. Forgiveness is a function of the heart. Myth number 3, forgiveness requires reconciliation. Many people resist forgiveness because they believe it means they must restore their relationship with the person who hurt them. They imagine having to invite their abusive relative to Thanksgiving dinner, go back into business with a partner who embezzled from them, or trust a chronically unfaithful spouse again. In many cases, this would be foolish, unhealthy, and even dangerous. This is a critical distinction. Forgiveness is a solo act. Reconciliation is a duet. You can forgive someone completely and totally in the quiet of your own heart without ever speaking to them again. Forgiveness is about your internal state. It is about releasing the bitterness and resentment that is poisoning you. You are the sole beneficiary of this act. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is about rebuilding trust and restoring a relationship. It requires the participation and commitment of both parties. It can only happen if the person who caused the harm is genuinely remorseful, has taken responsibility for their actions, and has demonstrated a consistent change in their behavior. In many situations, these conditions are not met. The other person may be unrepentant, unaware, or even deceased. In these cases, reconciliation is impossible. But forgiveness is always possible because it depends only on you. You can forgive someone who is not sorry. You can forgive someone who is no longer in your life. Your freedom should never be contingent on another person's apology or change of heart. Myth number 4, forgiveness is a sign of weakness. Our society often glorifies vengeance and retaliation. We see it in movies where the hero gets justice by destroying their enemy. In this context, forgiveness can look like giving up, surrendering, or letting someone get away with it. It can be perceived as the path of the weak, the passive, the doormat. The truth is the exact opposite. Holding onto a grudge is easy. It is our default primal response. It requires no emotional or spiritual maturity. It is a reactive state. True forgiveness, on the other hand, is an act of profound strength, courage, and personal power. It takes immense courage to look your own pain in the eye without flinching. It takes incredible strength to consciously choose a higher path when every fiber of your being is screaming for retribution. It takes discipline to stop the mental reruns of the offense and choose peace instead. Forgiveness is not passive, it is an active and heroic choice. It is you, the protagonist of your own life, deciding that the villain will no longer write the script. It is the ultimate reclamation of your power. A weak person is controlled by their circumstances and their reactions. A strong person takes control of their inner world, regardless of the external circumstances. By dismantling these myths, we clear the path. We begin to see forgiveness for what it truly is, a pragmatic, self-loving tool for healing. It is not about letting someone else off the hook, it is about letting yourself off the rack. It's not about being weak, it's about being strong enough to want to be well. With this new, clearer definition in mind, we can begin the actual work of the project. This work does not start with the other person. It does not start with an analysis of their motives or a demand for their apology. The forgiveness project begins in a much quieter, more intimate place. It begins with the simple yet monumentally difficult act of turning inward and giving a name to our own pain. It begins with the courage to acknowledge the wound. Chapter 4. The courage to acknowledge the wound. Before a wound can be cleaned and healed, it must first be seen. A doctor cannot treat an injury that a patient insists does not exist. They cannot set a bone that the patient pretends isn't broken. The first and most crucial step in any healing process is exposure and acknowledgement. You must be willing to look at the damage, to assess its depth, to accept its reality. So it is with the wounds of the heart. The forgiveness project cannot begin with denial, minimization, or spiritual bypassing. It must begin with the raw, unvarnished courage to acknowledge the wound. This step sounds simple, but it is one of the most difficult hurdles to overcome. We have developed sophisticated and powerful defense mechanisms to protect ourselves from the full impact of our pain. We tell ourselves, it wasn't that bad, or I'm over it, or I should just move on. We bury the hurt under layers of stoicism, busyness, or feigned indifference. We do this because looking at the wound is, in itself, painful. It means re-experiencing a fraction of the original shock, sadness, or humiliation. It feels counterintuitive, like pressing on a bruise. Why would we intentionally touch what hurts? We do it because a wound that is not acknowledged cannot heal. It can only fester. Hidden in the dark, it becomes infected with bitterness, resentment, and shame. It leaks its poison into every area of our lives, often in ways we don't even recognize. The unexplained anger, the persistent anxiety, the pattern of self-sabotage, these are often the symptoms of an unacknowledged wound. To heal, we must have the courage to turn on the light and look. Acknowledging the wound is a process of radical honesty with yourself. It involves 3 key stages: naming the harm, validating the feeling, and bearing witness to your own story. Stage 1. Naming the harm. This is the act of being specific. It is not enough to say, "My father hurt me." You must go deeper. What exactly did he do? What did he say? You must name the harm in clear, unambiguous language. For example, my father consistently belittled my ambitions, calling them foolish and unrealistic. He never came to my school events. He compared me unfavorably to my siblings. This was not a one-time event. It was a pattern of emotional neglect and disapproval. This is not about blame or creating a laundry list of grievances to be used as a weapon. This is for you alone. It is a diagnostic tool. By naming the specific actions, you take the harm out of the realm of vague, free-floating anxiety and make it concrete. You define it. This is critical because you cannot forgive what you have not defined. Vague hurt is impossible to release because it has no handles. Specific, named harm can be addressed. Take the case of Sarah, whose long-term friendship ended abruptly. For months, she just felt a general sense of sadness and loss. She told people, "We just drifted apart." But the feeling wouldn't go away. During her own attempt at a forgiveness project, she forced herself to name the harm. She wrote it down. My friend Jessica shared a deep secret I had told her in confidence with our entire friend group. When I confronted her, she lied about it and then accused me of being overly dramatic. She never apologized. She abandoned our friendship when it became inconvenient for her. The moment Sarah wrote those words, something shifted. The vague sadness coalesced into a clear understanding of the injustice. It was a betrayal. It was a violation of trust. Naming it didn't make the pain disappear, but it gave it a shape. She was no longer shadowboxing with a feeling. She was facing a fact. This clarity was the first step toward true healing. Stage 2. Validating the feeling. Once you have named the harm, the next step is to give yourself unconditional permission to feel whatever you feel about it. This is where we often get stuck. We judge our own emotions. We tell ourselves, "I shouldn't be this angry after all this time," or "It's weak to feel so sad about it," or "I'm overreacting." We try to reason our way out of our feelings. This is a form of self-invalidation, and it is profoundly damaging. Your feelings are not right or wrong. They simply are. They are the natural human response to the harm you named. Anger is a natural response to injustice. Sadness is a natural response to loss. Fear is a natural response to threat. To deny these feelings is to deny your own humanity. Validation is the act of saying to yourself with deep compassion, "Of course you feel this way. Given what happened, it makes perfect sense that you are angry. It is completely understandable that you are heartbroken. You have every right to feel betrayed." This self-compassion is the soothing balm that the wound desperately needs. It is the antidote to the shame that often accompanies deep hurt. We feel ashamed for being hurt, for being vulnerable, for not being strong enough to just get over it. Validation cuts through that shame. It creates a safe inner space where you can let the emotions rise to the surface without judgment. You allow the wave to crest and eventually to fall. You cannot release an emotion that you refuse to feel. You must allow yourself to feel it fully in order to let it go. Stage 3. Bearing witness to your own story. This final stage of acknowledgement is about piecing together the narrative of what happened and how it affected you. This can be done through journaling, speaking to a trusted friend or therapist, or even through a creative outlet like painting or music. The goal is to tell your story from your perspective without censoring or minimizing it. You are the protagonist. You are the one who experienced the event. Your perspective is the only one that matters in this part of the process. You must tell the story of the before, the during, and the after. How did this event change you? How did it shape your beliefs about yourself, about others, about the world? When you bear witness to your own story, you are reclaiming it. For too long, the perpetrator of the harm has held the power over the narrative. They defined the event. By telling your own story, you take back the role of author. You are no longer just a character to whom something happened. You are the narrator who is making sense of it. This process transforms you from a passive victim into an active survivor. A victim is defined by what was done to them. A survivor is defined by how they responded. The act of bearing witness is the beginning of that response. It is a declaration. This happened to me. This is how it felt. This is how it changed me. And now I am going to decide what this story means for the rest of my life. The courage to acknowledge the wound is the bedrock of the entire forgiveness project. It is the antithesis of denial. It is a fierce and loving act of self-preservation. It is painful, yes, but it is a cleansing pain, like applying antiseptic to a cut. It stings for a moment, but it stops the infection and allows the true healing to begin. This process of looking outward at the harm done by others often leads us to an even more challenging and necessary discovery. As we sift through the stories of our hurts, we inevitably come face to face with our own role, our own mistakes, our own regrets. And we realize that sometimes the person who needs our forgiveness most desperately is the one staring back at us from the mirror. Chapter 5. The Mirror of Mercy. Forgiving yourself. Of all the people we may need to forgive in our lifetime, a faithless partner, a critical parent, a disloyal friend, there is often one person whose transgressions we find the most difficult to release: ourselves. We are our own harshest critics, our own most unforgiving judges. We are intimately aware of every foolish decision, every missed opportunity, every moment we failed to live up to our own ideals. While we may eventually find a measure of grace for others, we sentence ourselves to a life of hard labor, carrying the crushing weight of our own past mistakes. The inability to forgive ourselves is a unique and particularly insidious form of imprisonment. It is the silent, humming background radiation of shame that contaminates our present joy and our future potential. It whispers to us that we are unworthy of happiness, undeserving of success, and defined forever by our worst moments. This self-inflicted punishment is the single greatest obstacle to personal growth and inner peace. Therefore, the most pivotal and challenging task in any authentic forgiveness project is turning the lens of compassion inward and learning to look into the mirror of mercy. Why is it so much harder to forgive ourselves than it is to forgive others? The reasons are complex. First, we cannot escape ourselves. We can distance ourselves from someone who has hurt us, but we are with our own thoughts and memories 24/7. The courtroom is always in session. Second, we hold ourselves to a standard of perfection that we would never impose on anyone else. We know we should have known better, done better, been better. We judge our past actions with the full benefit of our present-day hindsight, a fundamentally unfair trial. Finally, our guilt often feels righteous. We believe that by punishing ourselves, we are somehow atoning for our mistakes. We think that holding on to our shame is a sign of our moral character. It shows that we understand the gravity of what we did. We fear that if we let ourselves off the hook, we are becoming callous or immoral, that we might make the same mistake again. So we cling to our self-flagellation as a perverse form of penance and a misguided strategy for self-improvement. This is a profound misunderstanding of how growth works. Shame is not a motivator, it is a paralytic. It does not inspire us to become better. It convinces us that we are intrinsically bad and incapable of change. It keeps us stuck in the very pattern we wish to escape. True growth, true change comes not from self-hatred, but from self-compassion. Self-forgiveness is not about saying, what I did was okay. It is about saying, what I did was a mistake, and I am worthy of a chance to learn from it and move forward. The process of self-forgiveness mirrors the process of forgiving others, but with a unique, introspective twist. It requires the same courage, the same honesty, and the same compassionate steps. Step 1. Acknowledge the self-inflicted wound. Just as we had to name the harm done by others, we must name the harm we have done to ourselves or to others. This requires a fearless moral inventory, but one that is conducted with the intention of healing, not self-blame. You must be specific. Don't just say, I was a bad parent. Name it. I was impatient with my children. I yelled when I was stressed. I was distracted by work and missed important moments. My actions caused them to feel insecure and unheard. Or if the harm was to yourself, I stayed in a relationship that I knew was unhealthy for far too long. I ignored the red flags. I betrayed my own intuition and settled for less than I deserved, which damaged my self-esteem. Writing this down can be incredibly painful, but it is essential. You are taking responsibility. Responsibility is not the same as blame. Blame is static and focused on the past. I am bad. Responsibility is active and focused on the future. I am responsible for my actions and for what I do next. This honest accounting is the first step out of the shadows. Step 2, understand the you who made the mistake. This is a step of profound empathy, directed at your past self. We often judge our past selves as if they were a completely different and stupider person. But that person was you, operating with the knowledge, the emotional maturity, and the resources you had at that time. Try to understand the context. What were your motivations? What fears were driving you? What needs were you trying to meet, perhaps in a clumsy or unhealthy way? The person who yelled at their children was likely overwhelmed, stressed, and lacking healthy coping mechanisms. The person who stayed in a bad relationship was likely driven by a fear of loneliness or a belief that they couldn't do any better. This is not about making excuses. It is about generating understanding. When you understand the why behind your actions, you can begin to have compassion for the flawed, struggling human being who made that choice. You were doing the best you could with what you had at the time. Now that you know better, you can do better. But you cannot change the past. You can only change your relationship to it. Step 3, make amends where possible. While forgiveness is an internal process, it often calls for external action. If your mistake harmed another person, a crucial part of forgiving yourself is taking steps to repair that harm. This is the heart of making amends. It might mean offering a sincere, unqualified apology. Not, I'm sorry if you were hurt, but I am sorry for what I did. It was wrong and I know it hurt you. There is no excuse for my behavior. The other person's reaction is not your responsibility. They may or may not accept your apology. The purpose of making amends is not to guarantee their forgiveness, but to clean your side of the street. It is an act of integrity that demonstrates to yourself that you are no longer the person who made that mistake. Sometimes a direct apology is not possible or appropriate. The person may be gone from your life, or contacting them might cause more harm. In these cases, you can make a living amends. You can honor the lesson by changing your behavior permanently. If you were a neglectful parent, you can become a profoundly present and attentive one from this day forward. If you were dishonest in business, you can commit to a life of radical integrity. Your changed life becomes the apology. Step 4, the act of release, writing a letter to yourself. This is the ritual of letting go. One of the most powerful techniques for self-forgiveness is to write a letter from your wise, compassionate, present-day self to the past self who made the mistake. In this letter, acknowledge their pain, their fear, their circumstances. Offer the understanding and empathy you've cultivated. Then, explicitly on paper, grant them your forgiveness. Write the words, I forgive you. I release you from this burden. You have carried this shame for long enough. You have learned the lesson. It is time to be free. Read this letter aloud to yourself, looking in a mirror if you can. It may feel awkward, but it is a powerful symbolic act. You are formally ending the self-punishment. You are welcoming yourself back into a state of grace. Forgiving yourself is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice. The old tapes of shame will try to play again. When they do, you must learn to gently and firmly say, no, I have already dealt with that. I am forgiven. You choose again and again to live from your healed self, not your wounded one. The person staring back at you in the mirror is worthy of the same mercy you would offer a dear friend. When you can look at your own reflection and see not a catalog of errors, but a resilient survivor who is learning and growing, you have truly mastered the most difficult part of the forgiveness project. This inner peace becomes the foundation from which all other acts of forgiveness can flow. Yet, we often wait for one thing before we begin this work: an apology. What happens when the world remains silent and the apology we crave never comes? Chapter 6. The Empty Chair. Forgiving in the absence of an apology. There is a deep-seated, almost primal human need for justice and closure. When we have been wronged, we crave acknowledgement. We long for the person who hurt us to stand before us, look us in the eye and say, "I was wrong. I am sorry for the pain I caused you." An apology can feel like a key that unlocks the prison of our resentment. It validates our pain, affirms our reality, and opens the door to potential healing and reconciliation. But what happens when that key is never offered? What do you do when the person who hurt you is in denial, defensive, or simply gone? What if they are deceased or they genuinely believe they did nothing wrong? This is one of the most painful and challenging scenarios in the forgiveness project. Forgiving in the absence of an apology. Many of us put our healing on hold, waiting for an apology that will never come. We make our freedom conditional on another person's actions, awareness, or remorse. We sit by the phone, we check our email, we wait for a knock on the door, all the while allowing the wound to fester. We are effectively giving the person who hurt us a second victory. Not only did they cause the initial pain, but they now hold the power over our recovery. This is a form of self-torture, and it is a trap we must learn to escape. To forgive without an apology is the ultimate act of reclaiming your power. It is a declaration that your peace of mind is too valuable to be left in someone else's hands. It is the understanding that while an apology is a gift from them, forgiveness is a gift to yourself. To achieve this, we can use a powerful therapeutic technique known as the empty chair exercise. It is a method for creating the closure that was never given to you. Find a quiet, private space where you will not be disturbed. Place an empty chair in front of you. Now, in your mind's eye, visualize the person who hurt you sitting in that chair. See them clearly, their face, their posture, the clothes they might be wearing. Allow yourself to feel the reality of their presence. This exercise has two distinct and crucial parts. Part 1, speaking your uncensored truth. This is your moment. The person in the chair cannot interrupt, defend themselves, or invalidate your feelings. They can only listen. Now speak to them. Say everything you have needed to say for all these years. Do not hold back. Do not worry about being polite or articulate. This is for you, not them. Start by naming the harm. I need you to know what you did. It made me feel, use the specifics you identified in Chapter 4. Express the full spectrum of your anger, your hurt, your disappointment, your sadness. Let the tears flow if they come. Let your voice tremble with rage if it needs to. Tell them how their actions affected your life. Because of what you did, I struggled to trust people for years. Your words made me believe I was worthless, and I spent a decade trying to prove you wrong. I lost my ability to feel safe in the world. This is not a conversation, it is a monologue. You are emptying the contents of your wounded heart. You are lancing the boil, releasing the accumulated poison in a safe and controlled environment. Get it all out. When you feel you have said everything you need to say, that there are no more words left, take a deep breath. Pause, you have completed the first part. Part 2. Giving yourself the apology you deserve. This is the most transformative part of the exercise, and it requires a small shift in position. You can either physically move to the empty chair, or you can simply shift your perspective and imagine yourself speaking as the person in the chair. This may feel strange, but it is a profound act of healing. Now, from their perspective, you are going to give yourself the apology you have always longed to hear. This is not about trying to psychoanalyze them or guess their real motives. It is about crafting the ideal apology, the one that would have met your needs perfectly. Speak the words that would have brought you healing. For example, I'm so sorry. I am sitting here and I have finally heard you. I hear the depth of your pain and I understand now what I did. There is no excuse for my behavior. What I did was selfish and thoughtless, and it caused you immense harm. You did not deserve that. It was not your fault. I betrayed your trust, and I deeply regret the years of pain my actions have cost you. I understand if you can never trust me again, but I need you to know that I see the truth now. I am sorry. As you speak these words to yourself, for yourself, something remarkable happens. You are no longer the victim waiting for a key. You are the locksmith forging your own. You are providing the validation, the acknowledgement, and the closure that the other person was unwilling or unable to give. You are reparenting your own wounded inner child, giving them the comfort and justice they craved. You are taking the power back. This exercise may need to be repeated more than once. The layers of hurt can be deep. But with each repetition, the emotional charge lessens. The need for the actual person to apologize begins to fade. You realize that you have the capacity to heal yourself. Forgiving in the absence of an apology teaches us the most profound lesson of the forgiveness project. Forgiveness is not dependent on anyone or anything outside of ourselves. It is a sovereign power that we all possess. It affirms that our well-being is our own responsibility. Of course, this is difficult work. It is the emotional equivalent of heavy lifting. It requires intention, courage, and the right set of tools. Just as a carpenter needs a hammer and saw, we need practical, reliable tools to help us dismantle the structures of resentment and build a new inner home founded on peace. Let us now turn our attention to the Alchemist's workshop, where we can find the very tools designed to transform the lead of our pain into the gold of peace. Chapter 7. The Alchemist's Tools. Transforming Pain into Peace. Alchemy, the ancient and mystical art, was centered on a seemingly impossible goal: the transmutation of base metals like lead into noble metals like gold. The alchemists believed that through a series of processes dissolving, filtering, heating, and combining, they could change the very essence of a substance, turning something dull, heavy, and toxic into something bright, valuable, and pure. While their quest for literal gold may have been a metaphor, the principle of alchemy provides the perfect framework for the practical work of forgiveness. Our pain, our resentment, our bitterness, this is our psychic lead. It is heavy, it is toxic, and it weighs us down. The Forgiveness Project is our alchemical laboratory, and its goal is to transmute this heavy lead into the pure gold of peace, freedom, and compassion. This transformation doesn't happen by magic or wishful thinking. It happens through the application of specific, practical tools. These are the instruments of the heart's alchemist, designed to dissolve old hurts, filter out toxic emotions, and create a new, more precious inner state. Let's open the toolbox and examine some of the most effective instruments at our disposal. Tool number 1, the unsent letter. This is a cornerstone of the forgiveness process, a more detailed and private version of the empty chair exercise. It is a letter that you will write to the person who harmed you, and this is the crucial part, you will never ever send it. Its purpose is entirely for you. The fact that it will not be sent liberates you to be completely, brutally honest. Find a quiet time and space. On paper or computer screen, begin writing to this person. Pour out everything. Describe the incident in painstaking detail as you remember it. Explain how it made you feel then and how it makes you feel now. List all the ways their actions have impacted your life, your relationships, your view of the world. Don't hold back your anger, your sadness, or your confusion. Use the language you would use if there were no consequences. Once you have purged all the negative emotions, the lead, you can then move into the next phase of the letter. This is where the alchemy begins. Try to articulate what you wish had happened instead. Express the longing for a different outcome. And then, at the end, write the words of release. It could be something like, I am writing this letter to get this poison out of my system. I am tired of carrying this weight. For the sake of my own health and happiness, I am choosing to let this go. I am releasing you from the debt I thought you owed me. I am taking my energy back. I am setting myself free. When you are finished, you must complete the ritual. If you wrote it on paper, you can safely burn it, imagining the smoke carrying away the old pain. If you wrote it on a computer, delete the file and then empty the trash bin. This symbolic act of destruction is powerful. It signifies that the energy has been released and the process is complete. You have taken the toxicity out of your system and disposed of it. Tool number 2, the empathy bridge. This is one of the more challenging tools as it requires you to temporarily step out of your own pain and attempt to see the world from the perspective of the person who hurt you. This is not about excusing their behavior. It is about understanding it. Understanding and excusing are two very different things. Ask yourself a series of questions about the other person, playing the role of a curious, detached detective. What might have been happening in their life at that time? What fears, insecurities, or unmet needs might have been driving their actions? What was their own upbringing like? What wounds might they have been carrying? Is it possible that their intention was not to cause the maximum amount of pain, but that they were acting out of their own brokenness, ignorance, or desperation? Let's consider the story of Michael, whose father was a harsh, emotionally distant man. Michael's lead was a lifetime of feeling unloved and inadequate. Using the empathy bridge, he did some research into his father's life. He learned his father grew up in extreme poverty during the Depression and was sent to work at age 12 to support his family. He was raised by a violent alcoholic father himself. Suddenly, a sliver of understanding emerged. Michael's father wasn't a monster. He was a survivor of his own trauma. His emotional toolkit was empty because no one had ever given him the tools. His harshness was the only way he knew to prepare his son for what he perceived as a cruel and unforgiving world. This understanding didn't make the emotional neglect okay, but it reframed his father from a malicious villain into a tragic, limited figure. It depersonalized the hurt. It wasn't about Michael's worthlessness, it was about his father's limitations. This small shift can be profoundly alchemical, softening the hard edges of resentment into a more compassionate understanding. Tool number 3, reframing the narrative. Every wound comes with a story we tell ourselves. The unforgiving narrative is often one of victimization and loss. My business partner cheated me and it ruined my life. My spouse left me and now I will be alone forever. These stories repeated over and over become our reality. Reframing is the alchemical process of consciously rewriting that story. You don't change the facts of the story, but you change the meaning you assign to them. The goal is to find the gold hidden within the lead. Ask yourself, what did I learn from this experience? How did it force me to grow in ways I wouldn't have otherwise? What strengths did I discover in myself because I had to survive this? Did this painful ending clear the way for a new, better beginning? The woman whose spouse left her could, over time, reframe her story. The original narrative, he abandoned me and my life is over. The new alchemical narrative. The end of my marriage was excruciatingly painful, but it forced me to become independent and self-reliant for the first time in my life. I discovered my own strength, built my own career, and developed deeper friendships. The pain was the catalyst for me to find the person I was always meant to be. The facts are the same, the marriage ended. But the meaning is transformed from a story of loss into a story of empowerment. This is not about toxic positivity or pretending the pain didn't exist. It is about honoring the pain as a powerful teacher and a catalyst for transformation. Tool number 4, the physical release ritual. Our bodies store trauma and resentment. Sometimes we need a physical tool to help us let go. This can be as simple as going for a run and dedicating it to leaving the anger on the pavement. It could be taking a stone, imbuing it with the energy of your grudge, and then throwing it into a river or the ocean, watching it sink and be washed away. Some people find that screaming into a pillow, hitting a punching bag, or even vigorous gardening pulling weeds as a metaphor for pulling out old resentments can be incredibly cathartic. The key is the intention behind the action. You are consciously using your body to move the stagnant, heavy energy of unforgiveness out of your system. You are completing the circuit and allowing the energy to be grounded and released. These tools are not magic wands. They require practice and patience. Some must be used repeatedly. But they are effective. They are the practical hands-on work of the Forgiveness Project. They allow us to stop being passive victims of our past and become active alchemists of our present. However, there are some hurts so profound, some betrayals so deep, that they seem to defy these tools. They feel beyond the reach of normal human forgiveness. We must now venture into the most difficult territory of all, the realm of the unforgivable. Chapter 8. Beyond the Pale. Forgiving the unimaginable. There are harms that exist in a category all their own. They are so profound, so violating, so fundamentally unjust that they seem to break the very scale on which forgiveness is weighed. These are the acts that fall beyond the pale, a phrase that originally referred to the territory outside the protective fence of civilization. We speak here of deep trauma, catastrophic betrayal, violent crime, abuse, and acts of cruelty that seem to shatter the soul. When faced with such wounds, the very idea of forgiveness can feel like a mockery, an insult to the depth of the suffering endured. How can one possibly forgive the unforgivable? This is the most sensitive and challenging chapter of our forgiveness project, and it must be approached with immense care and compassion. Let it be stated clearly from the outset. No one has the right to demand forgiveness from a survivor of deep trauma. It is not an obligation, and for some it may never feel possible or appropriate. The goal here is not to create a new burden of guilt for not being able to forgive. Instead, the goal is to explore what forgiveness might mean in these extreme contexts and to offer a different perspective on it. One that is entirely centered on the survivor's liberation, not the perpetrator's redemption. When dealing with the unimaginable, we must radically redefine forgiveness. It is not about peace, love, and light. It is not about warm feelings or compassionate understanding for the perpetrator. In these cases, forgiveness is a gritty, fierce, and pragmatic act of survival. It is the ultimate refusal to let the perpetrator have the final victory. The final victory for an abuser or a perpetrator of violence is not the act itself. It is the lifelong emotional and psychological real estate they continue to occupy in their victim's mind, rent-free for decades after. It is the way the trauma continues to dictate the survivor's choices, poison their relationships, and steal their capacity for joy and safety. The perpetrator may be in prison or long gone, but if the survivor is still living every day in the psychological prison of that event, the perpetrator is still winning. Forgiving the unimaginable, therefore, is the act of evicting the perpetrator from your soul. It is a declaration of sovereignty over your own inner world. It says, "You took something from me in the past, my safety, my innocence, my trust. But you will not take my present, and you will not take my future. I am revoking your power over my emotional life." This is where your influence ends. This form of forgiveness is cold. It can be hard as steel. It has nothing to do with the perpetrator and everything to do with the survivor. Let's look at the story of Elena, whose brother was murdered during a robbery. For years, she was consumed by a vortex of grief and white-hot rage. Her hatred for the killer was the central organizing principle of her life. It was a fire that kept her warm in her grief, but it was also burning down her entire world. Her marriage was strained. She was estranged from friends, and her health was failing. She was bound to the killer by a chain of hatred. Her journey toward this fierce form of forgiveness began when she realized her obsessive hatred was keeping the killer's presence alive within her. He was a constant ghost at her dinner table, a phantom in her bed at night. She was giving him her life force, her precious energy, day after day. Her forgiveness was not a soft or spiritual release. It was a calculated decision to cut the cord. She said, "I choose to be indifferent to you. You are no longer worthy of my energy, not my love, not my compassion, and not even my hatred. You are nothing to me. I am taking my life back." She had to make this choice every single day. When the rage flared up, she would repeat her mantra, "You are not welcome here. This mind is mine. This heart is mine." This process is not about finding empathy for the perpetrator. Attempting to understand the motives of someone who committed a heinous act can be re-traumatizing. The empathy bridge tool from the previous chapter may be entirely inappropriate here. Instead, the focus must remain squarely on the survivor's needs. Here are some concepts to hold on to when grappling with the unimaginable. Separate the act from the aftermath. The act itself was a historical event. It is over. The aftermath, the anger, the fear, the hatred, is the ongoing experience. You cannot change the act, but you have a measure of influence over the aftermath. This form of forgiveness is about managing the aftermath so that it no longer controls you. Focus on releasing the hope for a different past. A great deal of our suffering comes from the desperate, futile wish that the terrible thing had not happened. We replay it, imagine different outcomes, and torture ourselves with what-ifs. Forgiving the unimaginable involves a radical, heartbreaking acceptance that the past cannot be changed. It is the act of grieving not only for what happened, but for the life you might have had if it hadn't. It is letting go of the hope for a better yesterday. View forgiveness as a form of justice for yourself. Justice is not always about punishing the offender. Sometimes the most profound form of justice is living a full, happy, and meaningful life in spite of what they did. Your joy is your victory. Your peace is your rebellion. By healing and thriving, you are demonstrating that their act of destruction did not ultimately define you. You are showing the world and yourself that the human spirit is more resilient than their capacity to harm. Acknowledge that it is a lifelong process, not a destination. With deep trauma, forgiveness is not a one-and-done event. It is a practice. There will be days, weeks, or even years when the anger and pain resurface with stunning intensity. This is not a sign of failure. It is the nature of a deep wound. The practice is to meet those moments not with self-criticism, but with the compassionate tools you have learned. To acknowledge the pain, to reaffirm your ownership over your own mind, and to gently guide yourself back to the present moment. Forgiving the unimaginable is the Mount Everest of the Forgiveness Project. It is a testament to the indomitable nature of the human spirit. It is the ultimate proof that we are not defined by what happens to us, but by the choices we make in response. And the choices we make, the healing we undertake for ourselves, never happen in a vacuum. Just as a stone dropped in a still pond creates ripples that spread outward, the act of forgiveness, even the most private, internal act, creates a powerful ripple effect. When you free yourself, you unknowingly begin the process of freeing others as well. Chapter 9. The Echo of Grace. How your freedom frees others. We often think of forgiveness as a deeply personal, almost solitary endeavor. It's a transaction that happens in the quiet of our own hearts, a private project of inner renovation. We do the work for ourselves to alleviate our own pain, to reclaim our own peace, to recalibrate our own silent magnet. While this is the primary motivation, it is only half of the story. The act of forgiveness, like a stone cast into a pond, creates ripples that extend far beyond our own inner world. When you heal yourself, you become a source of healing for others. Your freedom inevitably and powerfully begins to free those around you. This is the echo of grace. This principle operates on several levels, from our most intimate relationships to our broader community. Let's first consider the family unit. When one member of a family is consumed by an old grudge or a deep-seated resentment, the entire family system is affected. That bitterness becomes the emotional wallpaper of the home. Conversations are minefields, holiday gatherings are fraught with tension, and younger generations are often forced to take sides in conflicts they don't even fully understand. The unforgiveness is a toxin that seeps into the foundations of the family, creating an environment of anxiety and division. Imagine a father who has been estranged from his brother for 20 years over a business dispute. This isn't just a conflict between two men, it's a chasm that divides the entire extended family. The children grow up without knowing their cousins. The wife walks on eggshells, careful never to mention her brother-in-law's name. Every family event is shadowed by the painful absence of a key member. The father's unforgiveness holds the entire family hostage. Now imagine that this father undertakes his own forgiveness project. He does the hard work. He acknowledges his pain, he uses the empty chair, he reframes the narrative. He comes to a place of release, not for his brother's sake, but for his own. What happens next? The atmosphere in his home begins to change. The tension dissipates. He might not even reconcile with his brother, but he stops talking about the betrayal with bitterness. He stops letting it define him. His wife can breathe easier. His children notice that their father seems lighter, more present, less angry. Perhaps one day he says to his children, "You know, your uncle and I had a falling out a long time ago. I've been carrying a lot of anger about that, but I'm letting it go. It's not your burden to carry. Your cousins are good people, and I hope you can know them one day." With those words, he doesn't just free himself, he frees his children from the inherited grievance. He breaks the chain of generational pain. He gives them permission to form their own relationships, free from the baggage of the past. His single act of inner freedom echoes through the entire family, offering everyone a chance at a new, healthier dynamic. This echo extends to all our relationships. Think of the friend who is still seething over a divorce that happened 5 years ago. Every conversation is dominated by their anger at their ex-spouse. While you may be sympathetic, the relentless negativity is draining. The friendship becomes a chore. Your own energy is depleted by their refusal to let go. When this friend finally embarks on a path of forgiveness, the change is palpable. The conversations open up to new topics. They start talking about the future instead of the past. They become interested in your life again. The friendship is reborn. Your friend's freedom has freed you from the role of being a receptacle for their bitterness. On a larger scale, the echo of grace can transform entire communities. Consider the stories of reconciliation from places torn apart by conflict, like post-apartheid South Africa or Rwanda after the genocide. The public acts of forgiveness undertaken by figures like Nelson Mandela or the everyday survivors in Rwandan villages sent a powerful message. They demonstrated that a different future was possible. Their choice to forgive in the face of unimaginable horror broke the cycle of vengeance that could have perpetuated the violence for generations. It created the space for a nation to begin to heal. One person's courageous act of forgiveness gives others permission to consider it for themselves. It makes the impossible seem possible. It serves as a powerful model. When we see someone else lay down the heavy stones of their resentment, it inspires us to look at the stones in our own bag and wonder if we might be able to set them down too. Furthermore, a person who has done the work of forgiveness becomes a different kind of presence in the world. They operate from a place of peace rather than agitation. They are better listeners because they aren't constantly filtering conversations through their own grievances. They are more compassionate because they have faced their own pain and the pain of others with honesty. They are more resilient. People are drawn to this kind of centered, peaceful energy. A forgiving person literally changes the emotional temperature of any room they enter. Your forgiveness project, therefore, is not a selfish act. It is one of the most generous gifts you can give to the people you love and the world you inhabit. By healing your own heart, you stop transmitting your pain to others. You stop asking your spouse, your children, and your friends to carry the burden of your anger. You become a stable, peaceful anchor in their lives instead of a source of turmoil. So, as you do this work, know that the stakes are higher than just your own happiness. You are a link in a long chain of human relationships. By choosing grace over grievance, you are polishing that link, making it stronger and brighter. That strength and light will inevitably be felt by those connected to you. You are breaking a cycle of pain and starting a new cycle of peace. Your personal freedom creates an echo of grace that can and will change the world around you, one relationship at a time. But how do we ensure this change is lasting? How do we move from a single project to a fundamental way of being? The next step is to learn how to tend the garden of the heart, to make forgiveness not just an act, but a lifelong practice. Chapter 10: Cultivating the Garden. Making forgiveness a way of life. Completing a forgiveness project for a specific major wound is a monumental achievement. It's like clearing a large, thorny, overgrown patch of land in the garden of your heart. You've pulled the weeds of resentment, removed the stones of old grievances, and tilled the soil, making it ready for new growth. This is a cause for celebration. But a garden once cleared does not tend itself. Without consistent care, the weeds will inevitably return. The soil will become compacted and hard. A one-time effort is not enough. To ensure a lifetime of peace and freedom, we must shift from being a one-time project manager to a lifelong, dedicated gardener. We must learn to cultivate a forgiving heart. Making forgiveness a way of life is about developing a new default setting. Our old default, conditioned by ego and survival instincts, might have been to hold on to hurts, to keep a running tally of wrongs, to seek retribution. Cultivating a forgiving heart means consciously choosing a different response, not just for the big traumas, but for the small, everyday slights and irritations that can, if left untended, grow into thickets of bitterness. This is the shift from forgiveness as a dramatic intervention to forgiveness as a daily practice, like emotional and spiritual hygiene. It's about keeping the garden of the heart consistently clean and fertile. Here are the essential practices of a master gardener of the soul. 1. The practice of quick release. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. This ancient wisdom is profoundly practical. The longer you hold on to a hurt, the deeper its roots grow. A small annoyance that could have been released in minutes can, if nurtured with resentment, grow into a major grudge over days and weeks. The gardener's first rule is to pull the weeds when they are small and easy to manage. This means practicing immediate, low-level forgiveness for daily frustrations. The driver who cuts you off in traffic. The colleague who takes credit for your idea. The partner who says something thoughtless. In these moments, you have a choice. You can let the anger take root, replaying the incident in your mind, building a case against the person. Or you can practice a quick release. A quick release might sound like this in your mind. Okay, that was frustrating. That person's action was not about me. They are likely stressed, distracted, or caught up in their own world. I don't need to carry this frustration with me. I release it. I let it go. Take a deep breath and consciously move your attention to something else. You are refusing to water the weed. By doing this dozens of times a day, you build a powerful new habit. You prevent the accumulation of the psychic debris that hardens the heart over time. 2. Cultivating compassionate curiosity. A forgiving heart is a curious heart. Instead of jumping to judgment, what a jerk. A gardener gets curious. I wonder what's going on in their life to make them act that way. This is the daily application of the empathy bridge. It's a gentle, habitual questioning of the negative stories we tell ourselves about other people's motives. When your friend cancels plans at the last minute, the old reaction might be, she doesn't value our friendship. The gardener's reaction is, I hope she's okay. I wonder if she's feeling overwhelmed. This shift from accusation to curiosity changes everything. It diffuses your own anger and opens the door to compassion. It doesn't mean you don't have a conversation later about how the cancellation made you feel, but you enter that conversation from a place of concern rather than attack. This practice softens your interactions and prevents countless minor conflicts from escalating. 3. Tending your own soil. The practice of self-care. A tired, stressed, and depleted gardener cannot tend their garden effectively. It's easy to be reactive and unforgiving when you are running on empty. Tending your own soil, prioritizing your own well-being is not selfish. It is an essential part of maintaining a forgiving heart. This means getting enough sleep, eating nourishing food, moving your body, and spending time in nature. It also means managing your stress through practices like meditation, mindfulness, or deep breathing. When your own nervous system is calm and regulated, you have a much greater capacity to respond to life's challenges with grace rather than reactivity. You are less likely to perceive innocent actions as personal attacks. A well-rested, well-nourished soul is a more forgiving soul. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot offer grace to others when you are in a state of inner depletion. 4. The daily gratitude harvest. One of the most powerful ways to keep the soil of your heart fertile is through the practice of gratitude. Focusing on what is good, what you appreciate, and what brings you joy actively counteracts the brain's natural negativity bias. its tendency to focus on threats and problems. At the end of each day, take a few moments to mentally or physically list 3 to 5 things you are grateful for. They don't have to be monumental. A warm cup of coffee, a moment of laughter with my child, the sun on my face. This practice shifts your entire mental and emotional state. A heart filled with gratitude has less room for grievances. It recalibrates your silent magnet to attract more experiences to be grateful for. It's impossible to be simultaneously steeped in bitterness and genuine gratitude. Gratitude always wins. 5. Forgiveness as a forward-looking choice. Ultimately, making forgiveness a way of life is about orienting yourself toward the future, not the past. A gardener is always thinking about the next season, the next planting. They learn from the failures of the past, the blight, the drought, but they don't dwell there. They use those lessons to create a more abundant future harvest. When you are faced with a new hurt, ask yourself one simple, powerful question. Do I want to carry this with me into my future? The answer, if you are committed to your own well-being, will almost always be no. This question reframes forgiveness not as something you are doing for the other person, but as a pragmatic choice about the quality of your own future. It's a boundary you set with the past. By integrating these practices into your daily life, forgiveness ceases to be a daunting, monumental task and becomes a simple, continuous act of tending. It becomes second nature. Your heart, once a neglected and overgrown plot, becomes a flourishing, vibrant garden, a place of peace, resilience, and beauty. However, a healthy garden also requires good fences. The final crucial piece of this lifelong practice is understanding the vital relationship between a soft heart and a strong spine. The relationship between forgiveness and boundaries. Chapter 11. The Compassionate Gate. Forgiveness and Healthy Boundaries. There is a dangerous misconception that can sabotage the entire forgiveness project. The idea that a forgiving heart must be an open door. We fear that if we become truly forgiving, we will also become doormats vulnerable to repeated harm, endlessly tolerant of unacceptable behavior, and defenseless against those who might take advantage of our grace. This fear is what keeps many people clinging to their anger, believing it is their only shield. This is where we must introduce the concept of the compassionate gate. Imagine the garden of your heart, which you have so carefully cultivated. A healthy garden needs more than just good soil and sunlight. It needs a fence and a gate. The fence protects the garden from being trampled. The gate, which you control, allows you to decide who and what you let in. Forgiveness is the work you do inside the garden, pulling the weeds of resentment. Boundaries are the fence and the gate you build to protect that sacred space. A truly forgiving person is not a weak person. They are a wise one. And wisdom understands that forgiveness and boundaries are not opposing forces. They are two sides of the same coin of self-respect. Forgiveness is about releasing the internal poison of resentment. Boundaries are about preventing more poison from being poured into your system. Let's be clear, forgiving someone does not mean you must trust them. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Trust is an outcome that must be earned by the other person through consistent, demonstrated, trustworthy behavior over time. You can forgive your ex-spouse for their infidelity, releasing your own anger for your own sake, while simultaneously holding a firm boundary that you will never be in a romantic relationship with them again. You can forgive a family member for their addiction-fueled thefts, letting go of the bitterness, while also holding the boundary that they are not welcome in your home unsupervised and you will not lend them money. These are not acts of unforgiveness. They are acts of profound wisdom and self-love. You are not punishing the other person, you are protecting yourself. You are tending your garden. The gate is compassionate because you hold no ill will. You can wish them peace, hope they find healing, and hold them in a place of grace in your heart. But the gate remains closed to their harmful behavior. Setting healthy boundaries is often the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the other person. For yourself, it is an affirmation of your worth. It is a declaration that you deserve to be treated with respect and to feel safe. For the other person, a clear and consistent boundary can be a powerful catalyst for change. When you stop enabling or tolerating destructive behavior, you force the other person to confront the consequences of their own actions. Rescuing someone from the consequences of their choices is not kindness. It is called enabling, and it prevents them from learning and growing. So, how do we build and maintain a compassionate gate? 1. Identify your non-negotiables. What are your core needs for feeling safe and respected in a relationship? These are your non-negotiables. They might include honesty, reliability, physical safety, emotional respect, or sobriety. Write them down. These form the posts of your fence. Any behavior that violates these non-negotiables is not acceptable within your garden. 2. Communicate boundaries clearly, calmly, and firmly. A boundary is not a threat or an ultimatum. If you do that one more time, I'm leaving. It is a clear statement of what you will do to protect yourself if a non-negotiable is violated. It's about your actions, not about controlling theirs. For example, instead of, "You have to stop yelling at me," a boundary sounds like, "I feel hurt and unsafe when you raise your voice. If the yelling starts, I will remove myself from the conversation and we can try again when we are both calm." Notice the shift. You are not demanding they change. You are stating what you will do. You are managing your gate. 3. Be prepared for pushback. People who are used to trampling on your garden will not like your new fence. They may test your boundaries. They may call you selfish, cold, or unforgiving. This is a critical moment. You must be prepared to hold the line, not out of anger, but out of a calm commitment to your own well-being. The discomfort of holding a boundary is temporary. The cost of not holding it is chronic. 4. The gate can open, close, or be left ajar. Boundaries are not always permanent concrete walls. They are gates that you can manage with wisdom. If a person demonstrates genuine, lasting change, you may choose to open the gate a little wider. You may start to rebuild trust, slowly and cautiously. Conversely, if a person continues to show they are unsafe, the gate may need to remain firmly closed. Forgiveness can still happen on your side of the gate, but access is denied. You are in control. The integration of forgiveness and boundaries is the hallmark of a truly healed and empowered individual. It is the balance of a soft heart and a strong spine. Your soft heart allows you to release bitterness and wish others well. Your strong spine allows you to protect your peace and demand respectful treatment. You are no longer a victim of circumstances, but the wise and compassionate guardian of your own precious inner world. When you master this dance between release and protection, the alchemy is complete. The lead of your pain has not only been turned into the gold of inner peace, but you have also built a fortress to protect your treasure. Your silent magnet, now cleared of all interference and protected from future damage, can begin to operate at its full, magnificent power. It is time now to explore the incredible, life-altering things a healed heart naturally attracts. Chapter 12. The North Star of the Soul. The magnetic power of a forgiving heart. We began this journey with the image of a silent magnet, an unseen force within us that shapes our reality by attracting and repelling experiences. For much of our exploration, we have focused on the difficult but necessary work of clearing away the debris that interferes with this magnet's function. We have scraped off the rust of old resentments, demagnetized the pull of past traumas, and shielded it from further damage with the boundaries of self-respect. Now, with the magnet cleared and calibrated, we can finally witness its true power. What does a healed, forgiving heart actually attract? The power of this recalibrated magnet is subtle, yet it is as profound and reliable as the North Star is to a sailor. The North Star doesn't pull the ship, but it provides an unwavering point of reference that allows the sailor to navigate toward their desired destination. Similarly, a forgiving heart becomes the North Star of the soul. It aligns your entire being with a higher frequency, and by this alignment, it naturally and effortlessly draws into your life the very qualities you have cultivated within: peace, connection, resilience, and joy. The attraction of peace. The most immediate and palpable effect of a forgiving heart is the attraction of peace. This is not merely the absence of conflict, but a deep, abiding sense of inner tranquility. When you are no longer at war with your past, with others, or with yourself, your inner world becomes a sanctuary. The constant, draining hum of anxiety and anger is replaced by a quiet stillness. This inner peace acts as a powerful repellent to drama and chaos. People who thrive on conflict and negativity will find your peaceful presence uncomfortable. Their provocations will find no purchase, their gossip will find no audience. They will naturally drift away, seeking a more reactive energy to feed on. Conversely, you will find yourself drawn to and attracting other peaceful, centered individuals. Your nervous system, no longer on high alert, will recognize and gravitate toward the safety and calm in others. Your social circle will begin to reflect the peace you have cultivated within. The attraction of authentic connection. An unforgiving heart builds walls. A forgiving heart dismantles them. When you have released the fear of being hurt and have forgiven yourself for your own imperfections, you become capable of a new level of vulnerability and authenticity in your relationships. You no longer need to project a facade of perfection or strength. You can show up as you are, flaws and all, because you have accepted those same flaws in yourself and others. This authenticity is profoundly magnetic. People are starved for genuine connection. When they encounter someone who is real, who is not afraid to be vulnerable, they feel safe to be real and vulnerable in return. The superficial relationships based on posturing and pretense fall away, and in their place, you attract deep, meaningful connections. Your friendships become more intimate, your romantic relationships more honest, and your family ties more compassionate. You attract your tribe not based on shared grievances, but on shared values and a shared desire for authentic connection. The attraction of resilience and opportunity, holding on to bitterness consumes an immense amount of creative energy. It keeps you anchored to a story of loss and limitation. When that energy is liberated through forgiveness, it becomes available for new creation. Your mind, freed from the loop of replaying past hurts, is open to new ideas, new solutions, and new possibilities. This is where the magnet actively starts to pull in opportunity. You become more optimistic, more open to risk, and more resilient in the face of setbacks. A failed project is no longer seen as a confirmation of your worthlessness, but as a learning experience on the path to success. You bounce back faster because your self-worth is no longer tied to external outcomes. People are drawn to this resilient, creative energy. Potential business partners, employers, and collaborators are attracted to the person who sees possibilities, not problems. You begin to notice synchronicities and lucky breaks that you were previously blind to. This isn't magic. It's that your magnet, now tuned to the frequency of growth and opportunity, is finally able to perceive and attract what was there all along. The attraction of joy, perhaps the most beautiful gift of the forgiving heart, is the return of joy. Not just fleeting happiness, but a deep, foundational joy in the simple act of being alive. An unforgiving heart views the world through a gray filter of past pain. A beautiful moment is always at risk of being tainted by a bitter memory. When the filter is removed, the world appears in vibrant color again. You can experience a sunset, a child's laugh, or a piece of music with your whole being, fully present in the moment. Joy is found not in grand achievements, but in the small, everyday moments of grace that you were previously too burdened to notice. This capacity for joy is incredibly attractive. Joyful people light up rooms. Their laughter is infectious. Their lightheartedness is a balm. You become a source of joy for others, and in turn, you attract more experiences and people that amplify that joy in a beautiful, upward spiral. The North Star of your soul, your healed heart, does not guarantee a life free from challenges. The seas of life will still have their storms. But with this unwavering inner compass, you will navigate those storms with a grace and strength you never thought possible. You will no longer be a ship tossed aimlessly by the waves of past hurts. You will be the captain of your own vessel, charting a course toward a horizon filled with promise. Your silent magnet, once a source of pain and limitation, has become your most powerful tool for creation, guiding you steadily toward a life of profound peace, deep connection, and abundant joy. This is the power you have unlocked. This is the ultimate reward of your forgiveness project. Chapter 13. Your Forgiveness. Project, a lifelong invitation. We have arrived at the end of this book, but we are at the true beginning of your journey. We have traveled through the dark landscapes of pain and resentment, dispelled the myths that keep us trapped, and gathered the alchemical tools needed for transformation. We have learned to face our own reflection with mercy, to build compassionate gates of protection, and to witness the incredible magnetic power of a healed heart. The Forgiveness Project, as laid out in these pages, is a map. But a map is only useful when you choose to follow it. The journey of forgiveness is not a linear path from A to B. It is a spiral, one that we may travel many times in our lives. Each time we are faced with a new hurt, or an old one resurfaces, we are offered another invitation to engage in the project. We may find ourselves back at Chapter 4 needing to acknowledge a fresh wound. We may need to revisit the empty chair in Chapter 6 for a hurt we thought was long buried. We may need to reinforce the fences of our compassionate gate described in Chapter 11. This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of life. To live is to interact with other flawed, beautiful human beings, and to be hurt is an inescapable part of the human condition. The goal is not to reach a mythical state where you are never hurt again. The goal is to become so practiced in the art of forgiveness, so skilled with its tools that you no longer allow any hurt to take up permanent residence in the sacred space of your heart. The goal is to shorten the time between the injury and the beginning of your healing process. It is to know with unshakable confidence that you possess the power to mend your own heart. Your forgiveness project is now yours to own. It is a commitment you make to yourself, a promise to choose freedom over bondage, peace over turmoil, and a future of possibility over a past of pain. It is the most profound act of self-love you can undertake. When you close this book, let the central metaphor be your guide. Become aware of your silent magnet. Ask yourself each day, what is my heart attracting right now? Is my inner state aligned with grace or with grievance? Let this simple question be your compass. When you feel the familiar pull of an old anger, recognize it for what it is. The interference of the past trying to scramble the signal of your present. When you feel the sting of a new slight, see it as an opportunity to practice a quick release, to pull the weed before it takes root. When you look in the mirror, see not the sum of your mistakes, but the resilient, courageous soul of a gardener who is committed to cultivating a beautiful inner world. The power of forgiveness is the power to rewrite your own story. You are the author. The events of the past are the ink, but you hold the pen. You get to decide what those events will mean. Will they be a story of a life defined by wounds? Or will they be the story of a hero who learned to transform their scars into a source of strength, compassion, and wisdom? This is your lifelong invitation. It is an invitation to live with an open yet protected heart. An invitation to become a source of peace in a turbulent world. An invitation to be guided by the North Star of your own healed soul, attracting a life more beautiful and expansive than you ever dared to imagine. The project has been outlined. The tools are in your hands. The power has been yours